So let's look at another aspect. How we're doing medicine. Forget about the record now. How are we actually working when we try to fix a patient? So I start with the computer again and say, how do you fix a computer? Most of it, everyone is fixing computers all the time, so you should know this. So these are the 5 steps I think we go through. One is you have to know something about computers and software. Otherwise, give up. You prefer to know what happened to the machine. I just installed this patch from Microsoft and now it doesn't work anymore. That's important. The 3rd step is you examine the machine and you see what doesn't work. Does it start up? Doesn't it start up? Pops up all these error messages and stuff like that. The 4th step is you start looking for people that had the same problem on the net. You find someone say, yeah, this happened also after I did the update, but that's because I had Adobe at the same time and so forth. I say, aha, that's the problem. And I think that's where we find 95% of our problems, right? And the last point is get the tools and fix the problem. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. No, okay. How do you fix a human? Same thing. You have to know something about medicine, step 1. The patient history, what did he do? He actually fell off a ladder. That's why his leg is broken, right? Or, yes, he had the same pain 3 years ago. Maybe it's the same thing. On the other hand, that's dangerous because maybe it's not. So out of laziness, you often don't make new diagnoses. 3rd is you examine the patient. Same thing as checking the computer. 4th is you go to clinical guidelines, articles, books, and so forth, find out what has happened recently, epidemiology, news, and so forth. And the 5th step, do something about it, is give him a prescription or operate on him or something. Now, if you put these next to each other, the parallel is clear, right? This is the general process. People fix anything. Right? Now, if you look at the support we get, the thing that always is talked about in healthcare IT is this, patient history. That's what the electronic healthcare record is about, patient history. With the presumption that if the patient history is done correctly, well, everything is much better. I would say, if you take the parallel, is yes, it's interesting to know that they installed Acrobat just before that, but often it has nothing to do with it. And often they don't know what they did. If it's not your machine, people always go, I don't know what happened. I just started this morning and it didn't work. And then you discover afterwards that, oh yeah, I reinstalled the operating system yesterday, but I forgot. Eh? So they don't tell you the truth. So the history of what was done to the machine is sometimes a clue, but don't count on it. The same thing is true for the patient history. It's sometimes a clue, but don't count on it. Eh? I've done trauma surgery too. If you get a patient that comes into an emergency ward, you don't sit down and read their electronic healthcare record even if you had it, because it doesn't tell you anything. The guy has been in a car crash, for Christ's sake. You don't need the healthcare record for that. You need to see the car, right? And this whole thing about, yeah, but maybe he's allergic to something, we'll notice. It's not that important in emergency situations, even though there's a lot of hay being made out of that. You have to buy our system because if in the emergency ward, imagine he's allergic to penicillin. Well, I would say if you're really allergic to penicillin, hang something around your neck which says that you're allergic to penicillin. It's much more efficient, right? Or put a card in your pocket, which 20 years ago, patients always got these little cards with allergies that put in the wallet, right? Nobody talks about that anymore because you can replace this 10-cent card with a $10 million computer. Of course, you get the computer. That's crazy. Okay, next. What else do we have? We have radiology and lab and things like that belonging in this category of examine the patient. We also have surgical pharmacology and so forth down here for the treatment. But, and you can compare that exactly with these parts. But this, the most important part, in fixing a computer, 80% of your effort and 90% of the place where you find the solution is totally absent. Nobody does this. Nobody makes systems for healthcare that helps you actually understand and find a solution. There are systems, before you protest, like map of medicine, guidelines and so forth, dissociated, but they're outside. You have continued professional education, you have all references. But in this context, I have to mention something very important, and that is how big your screen is. Because it sounds crazy. Should have had a shot of that, I don't. Most electronic healthcare record systems today take up the whole screen, full screen. Here in Sweden, at least, this very impoverished country cannot afford real displays. So on each physician's desk, you find a 17 or a 19-inch Dell monitor from beginning of this millennium. Which means it's like working on a little chair. You can only see one thing at a time. There is no way on this screen that you can simultaneously work with the electronic healthcare record and, for instance, a clinical guideline system or anything. You can, but then you go back and forth and try to memorize between switches. And you also have to remember, another fun detail, is that the electronic healthcare record systems in general do not support copy and paste. Why? Nobody asked for it. Which means that if you want something in there, you have to either go there, print it out, go to the print, put it like next to you on the table and type it in yourself. That's how it works. You would not believe this was possible the last 20 years, but it is. This is state of the art, right? So we don't have that support. We don't have that support at our fingertips. What was the real fixed computer revolution? That's when we got the groups and the downloadable files and stuff like that. Because if we didn't have the internet to find this stuff today, we would not fix a single computer. If you remember the 80s, there were very few people that actually could fix a computer. And it would be even fewer today. Fix people, we're still waiting, it's not there. Now I'm going to tell you a little story. Yeah? I'm going to tell you a story how I hit on this. And that's because I was trained in medicine in Belgium. And then I did surgery, general surgery, thoracic, stuff like that in Belgium. And then I was a GP in Belgium. I had my own practice and everything for 12 years. And then I started doing more of, at the same time I did computers and stuff like that. So then a number of years I did nothing but consulting in IT. Then I moved to Sweden. I wrote a few of the systems they use here for communications. And then, about 5 years ago, I said, no, I have to get back into practice. So I got my Swedish license and I started working in healthcare centers as a GP. What happens is, if I've been out of medicine for like 10 years, 8 years, I got my license in Sweden in an afternoon. That was no problem, no exam or anything. All the medication is different. I was used to having my own practice, doing everything myself. Here it's the government, and you have secretaries, you have nurses. All the medications are different. The way to treat people is different. In Belgium, we did whatever we liked, and everybody liked it. In Sweden, no, you have to do this, or, and they start criticizing each other and stuff like that. So I was sitting there, here is a patient. What am I going to do? I know medicine, but, there's a big difference, right? They said, do you usually do a gastroscopy the first time they get with a stomach ache, or do you wait until they almost die? This is kind of a local culture thing, believe it or not. So I started, digging around and start using Google. Thing with using Google is great, but you have two problems. One is, don't let the patient see you using Google. But if you look at most care centers, you will see they have a 3M filter on the screen. Have you noticed? If you look at it, you don't see anything, because it reduces the angle of view. And the whole idea with this is, I don't want you to see I'm using Google, right? That's one thing.